On November 5, 2008, an 8-year-old boy named Christian Romero confessed to killing his 29-year-old father, Vincent Romero, and his father's roommate, 39-year-old Timothy Romans. However, there's a lot of speculation around this case, and people have questioned whether Christian had been coached by investigators to confess, or he simply told police what he thought that they wanted to hear. His father, Vince, was born on September 11, 1979 in Lakeside, Arizona, to his parents, Leroy and Liz, and his 2 sisters. He had a wife named Tiffany and another child other than Christian, a daughter named Faith, who lived in Tucson. Vince was a passionate outdoorsman who loved hunting, coyote calling, and spending time in nature. He had a warm smile and a playful sense of humor. I couldn't find a lot of information on his roommate Tim, but we do know that Tim was married to a woman named Tanya, and they had 2 daughters, one who was 18 and one who was 19 at the time of this case. Tim rented a room from Vince because he lived in Phoenix, actually 170 miles away, so he needed to stay there during the week. He ended up going home on the weekends to visit his wife and daughters. He was known as a very devoted father, and he even coached his daughter's sports teams. Although he lived apart from his family most of the week, his wife stated that he always sent love through calls and text messages. Christian and Tim both worked construction jobs at a nearby power plant and had returned home from work shortly before the shootings occurred. And now, in a quiet rural community in St. John's, Arizona, both men had been found fatally shot. Police were called to the home after Christian ran next door to his neighbor's house, claiming that he came home from school to find his dad and his dad's roommate deceased. Investigators later determined that the victims had been killed with a .22 caliber rifle that was kept inside the home. When police first arrived, this 3rd-grade boy gave conflicting accounts of what had happened. At one point, he claimed that an unknown man had entered the house and committed the murders. Later, he stated that when he came home, both his father and his father's roommate were shot, but they were not dead yet, so he killed them to put them out of their misery, as he had been taught to do on hunting trips with his father. As investigators continued questioning him, his story often changed. He was interrogated for nearly an hour without a parent or attorney present, which was a decision that would later become one of the most controversial aspects of the entire case. During the interview, police used leading questions and repeatedly challenged his denials. At some points in the interview, Christian indicated that he was in trouble a lot at home, especially for lying. They eventually asked if he may have shot his dad because he was mad at him, and he ended up saying, "Yeah, I think that's what happened." The 8-year-old boy ended up admitting that there were no intruders, and he himself shot and killed both men. As the investigation continued, authorities began examining Christian's home life, looking for any possible explanation as to how such a young boy could do something like this. No definitive public evidence of abuse was ever released, but that doesn't mean that it didn't occur. When investigators spoke to his mom, they didn't get the idea that Christian was a troublemaker or violent at all. However, she did note that Christian was often spanked by his father, and he even kept tallies of the spankings in a notebook. He also apparently told his mother that his 1,000th spanking would be his last. She stated that he had recently just received 5 spankings from his father, but there was never any info released to state if those spankings brought up his total to 1,000 or not. As news spread in the media that an 8-year-old child had confessed to double murder, the case obviously exploded into national headlines. People struggled to understand how someone so young could be responsible for killing 2 adult men, especially because investigators claimed that the rifle had to be manually reloaded between shots. Prosecutors initially pursued homicide charges, arguing that the shootings appeared deliberate, and they debated on even charging him as an adult. However, he ended up being charged in juvenile court for 2 counts of premeditated first-degree murder. The defense fought back against these charges. They themselves, along with the child psychologist, questioned whether the confession could be used at all. They stated that a child of that age was highly suggestible and unlikely to understand his legal rights, and also vulnerable to pressure during interrogation. The legal proceedings moved very slowly through late 2008 and early 2009. The case presented enormous legal and ethical concerns. Experts debated whether a child that young could truly understand death, intent, or premeditation in the same way that an older juvenile or an adult could. Defense attorney Benjamin Brewer strongly criticized the police interrogation of Christian, and he argued that the boy was frightened, confused, and psychologically incapable of making a reliable confession under those circumstances. In February of 2009, prosecutors ended up reducing the charges as part of a plea agreement. Instead of standing trial for double murder, Christian pled guilty to 1 single count of negligent homicide related to the death of Timothy Romans, and the charges against his father were dropped altogether. Although his team stated that the child himself accepted the plea deal, his mother objected and argued that her son was too young to fully understand the decision he made. Rather than adult incarceration, he was sentenced to treatment and supervision at a juvenile facility. He was ordered to be evaluated by a psychiatrist at the ages of 12, 15, and 17. In 2018, when he turned 18 years old, he was released to the public and was completely free, no longer subjected to psychological evaluations, travel restrictions, court hearings, or by any monitoring by law enforcement. From the start of this case, it has been shrouded in mystery, and a lot of questions have remained unanswered. But what we can be sure of is that both victims' families are heartbroken by the killings. It has been said that Vince left a lasting impression on everyone that he met. He lived a life filled with love, laughter, and happiness, and he is deeply missed by all who knew him. The same can be said for Tim, whose wife had said that she just cannot imagine life without him, and he is missed deeply.